Sustainable aviation fuel – facts you need to know. Sustainable aviation fuel is a safe, reliable, low-carbon biofuel. This term is the main term used by the aviation industry to describe a non-conventional, fossil-derived, aviation fuel. It has many other terms such as sustainable alternative fuel, sustainable alternative jet fuel, renewable jet fuel, or biojet fuel are used. In general, the same intent is meant. It is produced from biological resources, plant or animal material, and used to power aircraft that have similar properties to conventional jet fuel but with a smaller carbon footprint. Depending on the feedstock and technologies used to produce it, SAF has the potential to provide a lifecycle carbon reduction of up to 80% compared to the traditional jet fuel it replaces. The work of ICAO on sustainable aviation fuels. The 38th session of the ICAO Assembly recognized the many actions that ICAO member states have taken and intend to take in support of the achievement of the collective aspirational goals, including the development and deployment of sustainable alternative fuels, and encouraged further such efforts. Resolution A3818, paragraph 8. The three key element of sustainable aviation fuel. It consists of three key elements. 1. Sustainable. 2. Alternative feedstock to crude oil. 3. Fuel. One. Sustainable. It can be continually and repeatedly resourced in a manner consistent with economic, social, and environmental aims, and conserves an ecological balance by avoiding depletion of natural resources. 2. Alternative feedstock to crude oil. It is a fuel for aviation with an alternative feedstock, raw material from which fuels are produced, to crude oil. For example, in the USA it is estimated that 1 billion dry tons of biomass can be collected sustainably each year in the United States, enough to produce 50 to 60 billion gallons of low-carbon biofuels. These resources include I. Algae E. Agricultural residues E. Corn grain IV. Dedicated energy crops V. Forestry residues V. Oilseeds V. Other fats, oils, and greases V. Municipal solid waste streams X. Wood mill waste X. Wet wastes, manures, wastewater treatment sludge. This vast resource contains enough feedstock to meet the projected fuel demand of the U.S. aviation industry. Reference, Energy, Gov. For example, Air BP's SAF is currently made from used cooking oil and animal waste fat. 3. Fuel means jet fuel that meets the technical and certification requirements for use in commercial aircraft. Sustainable aviation fuel can be safely mixed with conventional jet fuel. The chemical and physical characteristics of SAF are almost identical to those of conventional jet fuel, and they can be safely mixed with traditional jet fuel to varying degrees, use the same supply infrastructure, and do not require the adaptation of aircraft or engines. Fuels with these properties are called drop-in fuels, i.e., fuels that can be automatically incorporated into existing airport fueling systems. It is safe to do so by certified fuel producers. Sustainable aviation fuel improve aircraft performance. Many SAFs contain fewer aromatic components, which enables them to burn cleaner in aircraft engines. This means lower local emissions of harmful compounds around airports during takeoff and landing. Aromatic components are also precursors to contrails, which can exacerbate the impacts of climate change. Cost of sustainable aviation fuel compared to traditional jet fuel. SAF is currently more costly than traditional fossil jet fuel. That's down to a combination of the current availability of sustainable feedstock and the continuing development of new production technologies. As the technology matures, it will become more efficient, and so the expectation is that it will become less costly for customers. Sustainable aviation fuel solves another problem. Raw materials are grown or derived to provide value to the producer. Farmers are seeking the highest value for their lands. At the same time, environmental services are needed to improve soil and water quality. Solving another problem, such as providing an environmental service, provides new raw material options for biofuels, particularly materials already collected. Farmers grow biomass on land between crops for other purposes, such as soil preservation, nutrient recovery, and erosion control. All are examples of biomass used for environmental service. Because this biomass is grown not as feedstock, but for another purpose, there may be opportunities to obtain it at a lower cost compared to purpose-grown crops. Often, the new crop can be mustards and other crops rich in oilseeds ideal for distillate and mid-distillate fuels. Acceptance and deployment of sustainable aviation fuel. The key to greater acceptance and deployment of SAF is a reduction in costs. Over the long term, that will require investment in advanced technologies to process feedstocks more efficiently at a greater scale and investment in the development of sustainable and scalable feedstock options. However, in the short term, interim support from governments and other stakeholders through policy incentives is needed. This support needs to be part of a long-term framework to give investors the confidence to make the big investments required to grow supply.
aviationprofessional.net